The silence of space was broken only by the steady hum of the research vessel's engines as Captain Elena Rodriguez stared at the readings on her screen. Something was out there in the asteroid field, something that didn't belong. Her team had been mapping this remote corner of the Kepler 442 system for 3 weeks, cataloging rocks and ice chunks that had been floating here since the dawn of time. But this was different. "Captain, you need to see this," called out her science officer. Chun Wei from his station. His voice carried that particular tone that meant he'd found something extraordinary. Elena pushed herself away from her command chair and floated over to Chun's workstation, her magnetic boots clicking against the metal deck as she landed. The holographic display showed what looked like a ship, not a modern human vessel with its clean lines and bright alloy hull, but something ancient and mysterious. The object was massive, easily 3 times the size of their research ship, and it had been drifting through space for who knows how long. Scorch marks and tiny impact craters covered its surface, telling the story of countless years spent wandering between the stars. "How long has it been out here?" Elena asked, studying the vessel's strange design. The ship's hull curved in ways that seemed almost organic, like it had grown rather than been built. Strange ridges ran along its length, and what might have been weapon ports were so smoothly integrated into the design that they looked more like natural formations. "Based on the wear patterns and radiation exposure, I'd say at least 1,000 years, maybe more," Chun replied, running his fingers through his black hair as he always did when he was excited about a discovery. "But here's the really weird part. The materials it's made from don't match anything in our databases. Some of these alloys shouldn't even be possible according to current physics." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. In her 15 years of deep space exploration, she'd seen plenty of strange things, but nothing quite like this. The ship looked dead, completely dark except for a faint shimmer along some of its hull sections that might have been reflecting. "Starlight, any signs of life?" she asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "Nothing on conventional scans," replied Yuki Tanaka, their pilot and electronics specialist. She was hunched over her console, fingers dancing across holographic controls as she ran every scan their ship could manage. No heat signatures, no electromagnetic activity, no chemical signs of life support systems. Whatever's in there, it's been cold and quiet for a very long time. But then Yuki paused, her brown eyes widening as she stared at her readings. "Wait, that's strange. I'm picking up some kind of low-level energy signature deep inside the ship. It's so faint I almost missed it. Like something's in standby mode?" Waiting. The 4th member of their team, Dr. Pavel Kowalski, floated over from where he'd been analyzing mineral samples. The old geologist had been on more deep space missions than the rest of them combined, and his weathered face showed the kind of caution that came from experience. "Could be a trap," he said simply. "Or could be the greatest archaeological find in human history. Either way, we should be very careful." Elena nodded, appreciating Pavel's wisdom. She'd learned to trust his instincts over the years. Still, the opportunity was too valuable to pass up. Discoveries like this could change everything humanity thought it knew about the galaxy. "Chun, can you get us a closer look without docking?" she ordered. "I want to know everything about that ship before we set foot on it." As their research vessel moved closer to the mysterious craft, more details became visible. The ship's hull wasn't just marked by time and space debris. There were deliberate patterns carved into the metal symbols that looked almost familiar but not quite recognizable. Some sections of the hull seemed to shimmer with their own internal light, as if the metal itself was alive. "Captain, I'm detecting some kind of docking bay," Yuki announced, highlighting a section of the ship's side where the hull seemed to fold inward. "It's big enough for our ship, and it looks like it might still be functional." Chun was practically bouncing in his restraints with excitement. "The energy readings are getting stronger as we approach. Whatever's powering this thing, it's responding to our presence. It's like the ship knows we're here." Dr. Kowalski frowned at his own readings. "The metal composition is becoming clearer now. I'm seeing traces of elements that we've only theoretical knowledge of. Some of these materials were supposed to be impossible to create outside of a laboratory, and even then, only in microscopic quantities. Elena made her decision. Yuki, take us in slowly. Full defensive systems on standby, but don't target the ship unless I give the order. We're going to dock and take a look around. As their vessel approached the alien craft's docking bay, something incredible happened. The bay doors, which had been sealed tight for centuries, began to open. Ancient mechanisms groaned to life, and lights that had been dark for longer than human civilization had existed began to flicker on. It's welcoming us, Chun whispered in amazement. The ship is actually opening up for us. The docking procedure went more smoothly than anyone had expected. Their ship settled into the alien bay with a soft thud, and within minutes, their computers confirmed that the bay had pressurized itself with breathable atmosphere, whatever technology was running. This ship, it was far more advanced than anything humans had ever created. Atmosphere is good, Yuki reported, checking her readings twice to be sure. Oxygen, nitrogen, trace gases. It's actually cleaner than the air on most space stations. Elena gathered her team in the airlock, making sure everyone had their environmental suits sealed and their emergency equipment ready. Even though the ship seemed to be providing a breathable atmosphere, she wasn't taking any chances with her crew's safety. Remember, we don't know what we're walking into, she told them as they prepared to step onto the mysterious vessel. Stay together, document everything, and if anything feels wrong, we leave immediately. The moment they stepped through the airlock, Elena knew they were walking into something beyond their understanding. The corridor they entered was vast, with a ceiling that curved high above their heads. The walls weren't the cold metal of human ships, but seemed to be made of some kind of material that was warm to the touch and pulsed with a faint, organic glow. It's beautiful, Yuki breathed, running her gloved hand along the wall. It's like the ship is alive. Chun was already taking readings with every instrument he had. The bioluminescence seems to be coming from the walls themselves. It's not electric lighting, it's some kind of biological process integrated into the ship's structure. As they moved deeper into the vessel, Pavel noticed something that made him stop in his tracks. Look at this, he said, pointing to symbols carved into the wall beside what looked like a control panel. These markings, they're not completely alien. Some of these symbols look like they might be related to ancient Earth languages. Elena examined the symbols more closely. Pavel was right. Hidden among the strange alien script were characters that looked almost familiar, like distant cousins of letters she'd seen in museums back on Earth. How is that possible? She wondered aloud. This ship has been out here for 1,000 years. Or more. How could it have any connection to Earth? Their answer came when they reached what appeared to be the ship's main computer core. The chamber was enormous, filled with crystalline structures that hummed with quiet energy. And there, displayed on a holographic screen that activated as they approached, was information that would change everything they thought they knew about human history. Ship registry, data scrolled past in letters that were definitely human in origin, though written in a style that was centuries out of date. And at the top of the display, in clear, unmistakable text, was the ship's name and origin. Prometheus Unbound. Earth Registry. Launch date, 2157. Elena felt her knees go weak as the implications hit her. This wasn't an alien ship at all. It was human, built over 1,000 years ago, using technology that made their most advanced modern ships look like primitive toys. That's impossible, Chun whispered, staring at the display. We didn't have this kind of technology 1,000 years ago. We were barely starting to explore our own solar system back then. But the evidence was right there in front of them, glowing softly in the alien light of a ship that their own ancestors had somehow built using science that modern humanity had forgotten or never learned in the first place. News traveled fast in the galaxy, especially when it involved something as shocking as humans claiming to have discovered advanced technology. Within 48 hours of Captain Elena Rodriguez's team transmitting their initial findings back to Earth, the story had spread through every major communication network in the known systems. And nowhere did it cause more of a stir than in the massive space station called Concordia, home to the Galactic Council. The Council had ruled this sector of space for over 3,000 years. 12 different alien species had come together to form the most powerful government the galaxy had ever seen. They controlled trade routes, settled disputes between worlds, and most importantly, they decided which species were advanced enough to join their exclusive club. Humans, in their opinion, definitely didn't qualify. The emergency session was called by Council Leader Zix9, a being made entirely of living crystal who spoke through harmonic vibrations that translators converted into audible speech. As the various representatives gathered in the great circular chamber, the air buzzed with excitement and disbelief. "This is ridiculous," declared Ambassador Thane of the Nixari, his multiple insect-like eyes clicking as they focused on the holographic display showing images of the Prometheus Unbound. The Nexari were a hive-minded species who thought in perfect, logical patterns, and to them the human claims made no sense at all. "We've been monitoring Earth for the past 600 years. These creatures barely managed to leave their own solar system 2 centuries ago." The other council members murmured their agreement. Representative Vex, whose species existed as pure energy contained within mechanical bodies, flickered with what might have been amusement. "Our records show that humans are still struggling with basic fusion technology. They can barely manage interplanetary travel within their own system, and now they claim to have built a ship using materials we've never seen before." Zix9's crystalline form shifted colors as he processed the information. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of millennia of experience. "The technology displayed in these images is indeed impressive. However, the logical explanation is obvious. The humans have discovered an abandoned vessel from one of the ancient civilizations that existed before our time. They are simply too primitive to understand what they've found." This explanation satisfied most of the council members. It made perfect sense to them. Throughout galactic history, younger species had occasionally stumbled upon artifacts left behind by civilizations that had vanished long ago. Usually, these primitive species would worship the technology as magical or divine, completely unable to comprehend its true nature. Admiral Corax of the Drakmari military caste stood to address the council. His reptilian features showed the kind of disdain that his warrior species felt for anything they considered weak. "The humans have been under our observation since they first achieved nuclear fission. We've watched them fight primitive wars over resources, struggle with environmental destruction, and barely manage to cooperate long enough to build a few space stations. The idea that they could have created technology superior to our own is laughable." The chamber filled with sounds that their universal translators interpreted as laughter. The crystalline chiming of the Zephyrians, the harmonic buzzing of the Nexari, and the electronic pulses of the energy beings all blended together in a symphony of mockery, but not everyone was amused. In the back of the chamber, observer Kellen of the Vorthek remained silent. Her species were known for their analytical minds and their reluctance to jump to conclusions. Something about the human discovery troubled her, though she couldn't quite put her finger on what it was. "The ship's design," she finally spoke up, her voice cutting through the laughter. "It doesn't match any known ancient civilization in our databases. The bio-integration, the material composition, the energy signatures. This is something new." Zix9's form flickered with annoyance. "Observer Callan, you forget yourself. We have cataloged every major civilization that has existed in this sector for the past 50,000 years. There are no unknown advanced species." "With respect, Council Leader," Kellen replied calmly, "our records only go back to when we achieved interstellar travel. There could have been civilizations that rose and fell before we ever left our homeworlds." This suggestion was met with even more scorn from the other council members. The idea that any species could have achieved greater technological advancement than they had was simply unthinkable. After all, they were the Galactic Council. They were the most advanced beings in known space. Representative Nix of the Luminar Collective. Beings of pure thought who communicated through telepathic networks, projected his thoughts directly into the chamber's translation systems. The evidence is clear. The humans have found an ancient derelict and are now trying to claim credit for its creation. This is typical behavior for primitive species seeking to elevate their status. Admiral Corax slammed his clawed fist on his podium. This cannot be allowed to stand. If we permit one backward species to make false claims about their technological capabilities, others will follow. Our authority depends on maintaining the natural order. The discussion grew more heated as various council members shared their opinions on what should be done about the human situation. Some suggested simply ignoring the claims entirely, while others felt that a more direct response was necessary. It was Ambassador Thane who proposed the solution that would ultimately be adopted. We should confiscate this vessel for proper study. Clearly, the humans lack the scientific expertise to properly analyze what they've discovered. It would be irresponsible to leave such potentially dangerous technology in their inexperienced hands. This suggestion was met with enthusiastic approval from almost every council member. Not only would it solve the immediate problem of human presumption, but it would also give them access to whatever advanced technology the ship might contain. ZYX-9 single quotes S crystalline form brightened as he prepared to call for a formal vote. All in favor of authorizing the immediate confiscation of the vessel discovered by the human expedition? One by one, the representatives cast their votes. The Nexari voted as a collective mind, their decision instant and unanimous. The Drakmari military was eager for an excuse to demonstrate their superiority. The energy beings saw it as a logical solution to an illogical problem. Only observer Callan abstained from voting, her unease growing stronger with each passing moment. Something about this whole situation felt wrong to her, but she couldn't convince her fellow council members to share her concerns. The motion passes, Zix-9 announced with satisfaction. Admiral Corax, you will take a fleet to the Kepler 442 system and retrieve this vessel. Use whatever force is necessary to ensure compliance. Admiral Corax's reptilian features twisted into what his species considered a smile. It will be my pleasure, Council Leader. I'll take the Dreadnought Eternal Dominion and a full escort fleet. The humans will learn their place in the galactic order. As the council session ended and the various representatives began to disperse, Observer Callan remained in her seat staring at the images of the mysterious ship. There was something about its design that nagged at her, something familiar yet impossible to place. She thought about the bio-integrated hull, the organic curves mixed with geometric precision, and the materials that shouldn't exist according to their understanding of physics. It reminded her of something she'd seen before, but where? Then it hit her. Deep in the Vorthek archives, there were legends about a species that had achieved transcendence through the merger of biology and technology. Ancient stories spoke of beings who could create ships that were alive, vessels that could adapt and evolve. But those were just myths, stories told to young Vorthak to inspire them to reach for greater scientific achievements, weren't they? As she finally rose to leave the chamber, Kellen made a decision. She would monitor the situation in the Kepler 442 system very carefully. If her suspicions were correct, Admiral Corax and his fleet might be flying into something far more dangerous than any of them realized. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shake the very foundations of galactic society, though none of the council members suspected it yet. They were so confident in their superiority that they couldn't imagine any scenario where their carefully ordered universe might be turned upside down, but sometimes the universe has other plans. 3 days had passed since Captain Elena Rodriguez and her team first stepped aboard the Prometheus Unbound, and they were no closer to understanding the full scope of what they'd discovered. The ship was like a puzzle with 1,000,000 pieces, each one more incredible than the last. Every corridor they explored revealed new wonders, and every system they examined defied everything they thought they knew about technology. Chunwei had barely slept, spending every waking moment trying to understand the ship's computer systems. The technology was so advanced that their own equipment looked like stone tools in comparison. It's like trying to understand quantum physics with a calculator made of wood, he muttered, rubbing his tired eyes as he stared at displays that showed information in ways he'd never seen before. Dr. Pavel Kowalski had set up a makeshift laboratory in one of the ship's smaller chambers, analyzing samples of the strange bio-integrated hull material. Under his microscope, the metal revealed structures that seemed to be part machine and part living tissue, perfectly blended in ways that shouldn't have been possible. "Elena, you need to see this," Pavel called out, his voice filled with wonder. "The hull isn't just made of some unknown alloy. It's actually alive, or at least it was. These are cellular structures, but they're integrated with crystalline matrices that can conduct energy and process information." Yuki Tanaka had found what appeared to be the ship's main engineering section, a vast chamber filled with organic-looking conduits that pulsed with soft light. The energy systems were completely beyond her understanding, but she could tell they were operating on principles that human science hadn't even begun to discover. "The power source isn't fusion, fission, or antimatter," she reported to the team. "It's something else entirely. The energy signatures suggest it might be drawing power from dimensional fluctuations in space itself. But it was Elena who made the discovery that would change everything." Deep in the ship's core, she found what looked like a command center, but unlike any bridge she'd ever seen on a human vessel. The room was circular, with surfaces that seemed to flow like liquid metal, and in the center was a crystal formation that hummed with quiet energy. As she approached the central crystal, something incredible happened. The entire room came alive. Around her, walls that had seemed solid suddenly became transparent, revealing the vastness of space outside. Holographic displays materialized in the air, showing star charts and navigation data that covered distances spanning half the galaxy. "Guys, I think I found the ship's main computer," Elena called out over her communicator. "And I think it's trying to talk to me." The others rushed to join her, and together they watched in amazement as the ship's systems began to activate around them. It was like watching a sleeping giant slowly wake up after a 1,000-year rest. Meanwhile, Admiral Korax and his fleet were closing in on their position. The Drakmari military commander stood on the bridge of his dreadnought Eternal Dominion, studying tactical displays that showed the human research vessel docked with the mysterious ship. His reptilian features showed the kind of predatory satisfaction that his species felt when they were about to demonstrate their dominance. "How long until we reach the target?" he asked his navigation officer, a younger Drakmari whose scales still showed the bright colors of youth. "Approximately 6 hours. Admiral," came the reply. "The humans appear to be unaware of our approach." Korax's forked tongue flicked out in what passed for a smile among his kind. "Excellent. We'll drop out of hyperspace just outside their sensor range and move in slowly. I want them to know we're coming, but not give them time to run." The Admiral had brought an impressive force with him. Besides his flagship dreadnought, he commanded 5 heavy cruisers and a dozen escort vessels. It was enough firepower to level a small planet, let alone deal with one primitive human research ship. "Sir," his tactical officer called out, "we're receiving updated intelligence from Galactic Command. The Council wants the ship captured intact if possible. They're very interested in studying whatever technology it contains." "Of course they are," Korax growled. "The humans probably don't even understand what they've found. They're like children playing with weapons they can't comprehend." Back aboard the Prometheus Unbound, Elena was discovering just how wrong the Admiral's assumptions were. As she placed her hand on the central crystal, the ship's computer systems began to interface directly with her mind. It wasn't painful, but it was overwhelming. Suddenly, she could sense every system on the ship, every conduit and connection, as if the vessel had become an extension of her own body. "Elena, what's happening?" Chun asked urgently as he watched her eyes begin to glow with the same soft light that pulsed through the ship's walls. "It's showing me," she whispered, her voice filled with awe. "The ship is showing me what it really is. It's not just a machine, it's alive. It's been waiting here for someone to find it, someone who could wake it up." The ship's consciousness was vast and ancient, filled with memories of journeys across impossible distances and knowledge that spanned millennia. Elena could sense its loneliness, the long years it had spent drifting through space with no one to talk to, no purpose to fulfill, but she could also sense its power. This wasn't just an advanced spacecraft. It was a marvel of bioengineering and quantum technology that could do things she'd never even dreamed of. The ship could bend space around itself, phase between dimensions, and defend itself with weapons that operated on principles human science hadn't discovered yet. "Something's coming," Elena announced suddenly, her connection to the ship allowing her to sense the approaching fleet long before their own sensors could detect it. A large military force, 12 ships, heavily armed. There's still several hours away, but they're definitely heading for us. Dr. Kowalski frowned as he checked their own ship's sensors. "I'm not reading anything on our scopes. How can you possibly know that?" "The ship told me," Elena replied, and she realized how crazy that must sound. "I know it's hard to believe, but I'm connected to its systems now. I can sense things it senses." Yuki ran to her station and began frantically adjusting their sensor arrays. After several minutes of fine-tuning, she managed to pick up the faint signatures of ships moving through hyperspace, still too distant for normal detection, but definitely there. "She's right," Yuki confirmed, her voice tight with worry. "I'm reading multiple large vessels on an intercept course. Military-grade ships by the look of their energy signatures." Shun pulled up everything he could find about Galactic Council. Military forces on his portable computer. If they're coming for the ship, they're probably here to confiscate it. The Council doesn't like it when primitive species make claims about advanced technology. Elena could feel the ship's consciousness stirring more strongly now, responding to the approaching threat. Systems that had been dormant for centuries were coming online, and she could sense weapon arrays that had been hidden beneath the organic hull beginning to power up. "The ship wants to defend itself," she announced, her voice carrying a strange mixture of her own thoughts and the ancient vessel's intentions. "It's been asleep for so long, but it remembers how to fight." As Admiral Corax's fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, their sensors immediately locked onto the two ships in the asteroid field. The Admiral studied the readings with growing amusement. The human research vessel was exactly what he'd expected, a small, lightly armed craft that posed no threat whatsoever. But the other ship, the one the humans had discovered, was beginning to show energy readings that made him pause. "Tactical, what are you seeing from the derelict vessel?" he asked. His tactical officer, a grizzled veteran of dozens of campaigns, stared at his displays with confusion. "Sir, the energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. Power levels are increasing rapidly, and I'm detecting what might be weapon systems, but the configurations don't match any known technology." Corax waved dismissively. "Probably just some automatic systems responding to our presence. Ancient ships sometimes have basic defensive protocols. It's nothing our shields can't handle." But as his fleet began to advance toward the asteroid field, the readings from the mysterious ship continued to climb. What had started as barely detectable energy signatures were now showing power levels that rivaled their own dreadnought. "Sir," his tactical officer called out with increasing urgency, "I'm now reading multiple weapon systems coming online. The ship appears to be targeting our fleet." For the first time since beginning this mission, Admiral Corax felt a twinge of uncertainty. But his pride wouldn't let him admit that a 1,000-year-old derelict could pose any real threat to the finest fleet in the Galactic Council's navy. "All ships maintain course and speed," he ordered. "Prepare to transmit surrender demands to the human vessel. And keep an eye on that derelict. If it so much as points a weapon in our direction, destroy it." What the Admiral didn't realize was that the ship was already pointing weapons at his fleet, dozens of them. Hidden beneath its organic hull were defensive systems that operated on principles his civilization had never discovered, powered by energy sources they couldn't even begin to. The moment Admiral Corax's fleet entered weapons range, everything changed. What had seemed like a routine confiscation mission suddenly became something that would haunt the Drakmari commander for the rest of his life. The ancient ship didn't just defend itself. It demonstrated a level of technological superiority that made the Galactic Council's most advanced vessels look like toys in comparison. Elena felt the ship's response through her neural connection before anyone else could even process what was happening. The Prometheus Unbound didn't attack with conventional weapons or energy beams. Instead, it simply reached out with invisible forces and gently turned off every weapon system in the approaching fleet. What just happened? Admiral Corex roared as alarms began blaring throughout his flagship. His tactical displays showed impossible readings, systems failing one by one without any apparent cause. "Sir, all weapon systems are offline," his tactical officer reported, his voice shaking with disbelief. "Shields are down and our propulsion is operating at only 20% capacity. But there's no sign of any attack. No energy weapons, no missiles, nothing." Commander Thex, Corex's second-in-command, stared at his own instruments in confusion. "It's like the ship just asked our systems to stop working, and they agreed. This shouldn't be possible." Throughout the fleet, similar reports were coming in from every vessel. The ancient ship had somehow disabled their most advanced military technology without firing a single shot. It was as if their weapons had simply decided to take a nap back aboard the Prometheus Unbound. Elena was experiencing something that would have been impossible to explain to anyone who hadn't felt it themselves. The ship's consciousness was vast and patient, like an old teacher dealing with unruly children. She could sense its amusement at the aliens' confusion, but also its restraint. This ancient vessel could have destroyed the entire fleet in seconds, but it chose not to. "Elena, what did the ship do?" Chen asked urgently, watching as their sensors showed the alien fleet drifting helplessly in space. "It just turned off their toys," Elena replied, her voice carrying an otherworldly calm that came from her connection to the ship's mind. "It didn't want to hurt anyone, so it just made their weapons stop working." Dr. Kowalski was frantically taking readings from his instruments. "The energy patterns are incredible. The ship somehow transmitted some kind of signal that interfaced directly with the alien technology. It's like it spoke to their computers in a language more fundamental than any programming code." Yuki shook her head in amazement as she monitored the communications channels. "The aliens are going crazy out there. They're sending distress calls, demanding explanations, threatening retaliation. But they can't do anything because their ships won't respond to their commands." That's when the ship decided it was time to have a conversation. The air in the command center began to shimmer, and slowly a holographic figure materialized before the human crew. It wasn't quite human, but it wasn't alien either. The figure seemed to be a blend of organic and technological elements, with features that suggested both advanced evolution and artificial enhancement. "Greetings," the figure said, its voice somehow managing to sound both ancient and timeless. "I am GA-7, the consciousness of this vessel. I have been waiting a very long time for someone to wake me from my slumber." Elena felt her connection to the ship intensify as GA-7 spoke directly to her mind. Through that connection, she began to understand the true scope of what they had discovered. This wasn't just an advanced ship from an unknown civilization. This was a remnant of humanity's own forgotten past, a past so incredible that it challenged everything they thought they knew about their species' history. "You're human," Elena whispered, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. "But that's impossible. We didn't have this technology 1,000 years ago." GAI-7's holographic form smiled with an expression that was both sad and proud. "Your people did indeed have this technology, Captain Rodriguez. In fact, they had technology. That makes this ship seem primitive by comparison. But they made a choice that changed the course of galactic history." Meanwhile, aboard the disabled Drakmari flagship, Admiral Corex was facing the most humbling experience of his military career. His communications officer had managed to establish a channel with the mysterious vessel, and what he heard through that channel challenged every assumption he'd ever made about the natural order of the galaxy. "Attention, Galactic Council Fleet," came a voice that was clearly artificial yet somehow more alive than any organic being Corex had ever encountered. I am GAI-7, Artificial Intelligence and Guardian of the Human Vessel Prometheus Unbound. Your weapons have been temporarily disabled to prevent unnecessary violence. No harm will come to your crews if you listen to what I have to say. This is Admiral Corax of the Galactic Council Defense Force, the Drakmari commander replied, trying to maintain his authority despite his helpless position. You are in violation of Council law by interfering with official Council business. Release our ships immediately. Admiral Corax, GAI-7 replied with what sounded like amusement. You are laboring under several misconceptions about the nature of authority in this galaxy. Perhaps it is time for your education to begin. What followed was a revelation that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. Through holographic displays that appeared throughout both the human research vessel and the disabled alien fleet, GAI-7 began to share the true history of humanity's place in the galaxy. The images showed Earth as it had been 1,000 years ago, but not the primitive world that Galactic Council records described. Instead, they saw a planet that had achieved technological transcendence, with cities that existed partially in parallel dimensions and ships that could manipulate the very fabric of space and time. 1,000 years ago, GAI-7 explained, humanity reached what you might call a technological singularity. They learned to merge biological evolution with quantum engineering, creating technology that operated on principles beyond conventional physics. The holographic displays showed vast space habitats that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, allowing them to house billions of beings in spaces that appeared no larger than asteroids. They saw ships that could travel between galaxies in minutes, and manufacturing systems that could create matter from pure energy, but perhaps most shocking of all was the revelation of humanity's reach throughout the galaxy. The records showed human colonies and outposts and star systems that the Galactic Council had never even heard of, scientific installations in dimensions that their best physicists couldn't access, and exploration missions that had mapped regions of space beyond the edge of the known universe. Your people were everywhere, Commander Thex whispered as he watched the displays aboard the Drakmari flagship. They had technology that we can't even begin to understand. If humans were so advanced, Admiral Corax demanded, where are they? Now, why do current human populations appear so primitive? GAI-7's holographic form seemed to grow more solid as it prepared to answer the most important question of all. Because they chose to withdraw? When humanity achieved transcendence, they faced a choice that every advanced civilization eventually encounters. They could use their power to dominate and control the galaxy, or they could step back and allow younger species to develop naturally. The implications of this statement hit the alien crews like a physical blow. Everything they thought they knew about galactic hierarchy, about their own superiority, about the natural order of civilization, was built on a foundation of deliberate human restraint. Your Galactic Council, GAI-7 continued, exists because humanity allowed it to exist. Your trade routes, your territories, your entire civilization developed in spaces that humanity chose to leave empty. They could have ruled this galaxy with absolute authority, but instead they scattered across dimensions and distant regions of space, becoming explorers and philosophers rather than conquerors. Elena felt tears streaming down her face as she processed what she was learning about her own species. But why? Why give up so much power? Because true advancement isn't measured by the ability to control others, GAI-7 replied gently. It's measured by the wisdom to know when not to use the power you possess. Humanity learned that lesson and chose to let the galaxy develop its own path to greatness. The ancient AI turned its attention back to the alien fleet. I was left here as one of many guardians, watching over this region of space and protecting the younger civilizations as they grew. But my primary mission was to wait, to see if humanity's descendants would one day be ready to reclaim their heritage. Admiral Corax felt his worldview crumbling around him. Everything the Galactic Council stood for, all their pride in their technological achievements, all their assumptions about their place in the universe had just been revealed as the delusions. of children playing in a sandbox that had been built for them by beings beyond their comprehension. "What happens now?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Gaia 7's expression became thoughtful. "That depends on the choices made by both our species. Humanity's time of hiding may be coming to an end, but whether they return as teachers or judges will depend largely on how the galaxy receives this knowledge." Elena Rodriguez stood in the command center of the Prometheus Unbound, feeling the weight of the entire galaxy's future resting on her shoulders. The quantum beacon that GAIA-7 had shown her hummed with potential energy, waiting for her decision. With one touch, she could contact humanity's scattered civilization and bring them back to reclaim their rightful place among the stars. But was that the right choice? Through her connection to the ship's consciousness, she could feel the presence of the disabled alien fleet, their crews struggling to comprehend the reality of what they'd learned. Admiral Corax and his officers sat in stunned silence, their entire understanding of the universe turned upside down in the span of a few hours. "Show me more," Elena whispered to GAIA-7. "I need to understand what humanity became before I make this decision." The holographic displays around the command center shifted and expanded, revealing images that took Elena's breath away. She saw human cities that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, their architecture flowing like living music between realities. The people living in these places had evolved beyond anything she could have imagined, their bodies enhanced with biotechnology that made them as much energy as matter. They became explorers of infinite possibility, GAIA-7 explained, its voice filled with pride and sadness. "When your ancestors mastered the merger of consciousness and quantum mechanics, they gained the ability to experience reality in ways that no other species had ever achieved. They could exist in multiple timelines simultaneously, explore parallel universes, and communicate across distances that made galactic space seem tiny." Dr. Kowalski watched the displays with scientific wonder, his old mind trying to grasp concepts that challenged everything he'd studied. "How many of them are out there?" "Billions," GAIA-7 replied, "spread across dimensions and realities that the Galactic Council has never dreamed of. They've built civilizations in the spaces between atoms and constructed entire universes in pocket dimensions. But they've never forgotten about the galaxy they left behind." Chen Wei was frantically trying to record everything he was seeing, though he suspected that their equipment couldn't properly capture the full scope of what they were witnessing. If they're so advanced, why haven't they returned? Why leave ships like this one as guardians instead of coming back themselves? The ancient AI's expression grew thoughtful. Because they understood something that many advanced species fail to learn. Power without wisdom leads to destruction. They had seen what happened to civilizations that used their technology to dominate others. Such species always end up destroying themselves and everyone around them. Elena felt a chill as she realized the implications. They were afraid of what they might become if they stayed. "Not afraid," GAIA-7 corrected gently. "Wise, they knew that the temptation to use their power to solve every problem, to protect everyone from every danger, would eventually make them tyrants. So they chose to step back and let the galaxy find its own way forward." Meanwhile, aboard the Drakmari flagship, the impact of these revelations was spreading throughout the alien fleet. Commander Thex had managed to restore basic communications between the ships, and the conversations happening on those channels would have been unthinkable just hours earlier. "Everything we thought we knew was wrong," whispered Captain Vex of the cruiser Stellar Claw. "We've been ruling over a kingdom that was given to us by beings we can't even comprehend." Admiral Corax found his voice at last, though it came out as barely more than a croak. "GAI-7, if humanity wanted to remain hidden, why reveal themselves now?" The AIS attention turned to the alien fleet, and every crew member could feel the weight of its ancient gaze, because the galaxy stands at a crossroads. Your Galactic Council has maintained peace for 3,000 years, but that peace is fragile. New threats are emerging from the dark spaces between galaxies, forces that will require more than conventional technology to defeat. New holographic displays appeared throughout the fleet, showing images of vast, dark shapes moving through the void between galaxies. These weren't ships or creatures, but something far more alien and threatening. They seemed to consume light itself, leaving nothing but cold darkness in their wake. The Devourers, GAIA-7 explained. Entities from the spaces between universes that feed on dimensional energy. They've been moving toward this galaxy for millions of years, and they'll arrive within the next century. When they do, every civilization in this galaxy will need to work together to survive. Elena felt the ship's consciousness share her concern and uncertainty. And you think humanity needs to come back to help fight them? I think the galaxy needs every advantage it can get, GIA-7 replied honestly. But that decision must be made freely by someone who understands both the cost and the responsibility involved. Elena closed her eyes and tried to imagine what would happen if she activated the beacon. Humanity would return, bringing technology and knowledge that could transform the galaxy overnight. The Galactic Council's authority would crumble, replaced by beings of such advanced capability that they might as well be gods to the current civilizations. But was that what the galaxy needed? Or would humanity's return simply create new problems? New dependencies, new forms of tyranny disguised as protection? What do you think I should do? She asked GAIA-7. I think you should do what humans have always done best. The AI replied with something that might have been a smile. Choose the path that preserves the freedom of others to make their own choices. Elena opened her eyes and looked at her crew. Qingmi's still recording everything, his scientific mind fascinated by every new revelation. Dr. Kowalski was studying the displays of the approaching threat, already trying to figure out how conventional technology might be adapted to fight it. Yuki was monitoring the alien fleet, making sure they weren't planning any hostile actions. What if we took a different approach? Elena said slowly, an idea forming in her mind. What if instead of calling humanity back immediately, we shared just enough knowledge to help the galaxy prepare for what's coming? GAIA-7's holographic form brightened with approval. A gradual transition rather than a sudden revelation. Allow the current civilizations to grow into greater capability rather than simply replacing them with superior technology. Elena nodded, feeling the rightness of the decision in her bones. The ship has advanced knowledge about dimensional physics, quantum engineering, biointegration technology. We could share enough to give the Galactic Council and other species the tools they need to defend themselves, without overwhelming them with power they're not ready to handle. And if that's not enough? Qin asked. If the threat is too great for even enhanced conventional technology? Then we still have the beacon, Elena replied. If the galaxy truly faces extinction, we can call for help. But let's give them the chance to stand on their own feet first. Admiral Korex, who had been listening to this conversation through the open communications channel, felt something he'd never experienced before. It was humility mixed with a grudging respect for the species he'd dismissed as primitive just hours earlier. Captain Rodriguez, he said, his voice carrying none of its earlier arrogance. The Galactic Council owes you an apology, and perhaps we owe humanity far more than we can ever repay. Elena smiled, feeling the weight of decision lifting from her shoulders. Admiral, what humanity wants most is for every species to reach their full potential. Help us share this knowledge responsibly, and that debt will be more than paid. Over the following weeks, the most remarkable transformation in galactic history began to unfold. GAIA-7 shared carefully selected portions of human technology with teams of scientists from every major civilization. The biointegration techniques revolutionized medicine and engineering. The dimensional physics opened up new possibilities. FR energy generation and space travel. The quantum consciousness principles led to advances in artificial intelligence and communication technology, but perhaps most importantly, the revelation of humanity's true history changed how the various species viewed each other and themselves. The arrogance that had characterized much of the Galactic Council's rule gave way to a new humility and a genuine desire to work together. Elena kept the quantum beacon ready, hidden in the depths of the awakened ship. It was a safeguard, a final option if the galaxy's enhanced defenses proved insufficient against the approaching darkness. But she had faith that it wouldn't be needed. The same wisdom that had led humanity to withdraw from galactic politics 1,000 years ago had taught her that the greatest gift you could give someone wasn't protection, but the tools and knowledge they needed to protect themselves. As she stood on the bridge of her research vessel, now equipped with technology that made it one of the most advanced ships in the galaxy, Elena looked out at the stars and smiled. Humanity's greatest legacy wasn't the technology they'd developed or the power they'd wielded. It was the wisdom to know when to step back and let others find their own way to greatness. And perhaps, when the time came to face the darkness between the galaxies, that wisdom would prove to be the most powerful weapon of all.